Passengers at LAX stood frozen as Ranger, the German shepherd belonging to the Hells Angels, suddenly charged straight toward a forgotten blue suitcase, growling, barking furiously, and clawing at it, as if something horrific was hidden inside. TSA agents shouted for everyone to back up, but Ranger only grew more frantic, pressing his nose against the fabric and letting out a desperate whine no one had ever heard from him before. Ray, his veteran handler, tried to pull him back but couldn't. Ranger clawed violently at the zipper, each scratch like he was counting down the seconds for a life slipping away. Many thought the dog had lost control, but Ranger barked louder, his eyes wild with panic that made everyone around feel something terrible was right in front of them. A TSA officer rushed over, grabbed the handle and yelled, "Whose bag is this? Step forward now." No one answered. Everyone crowded around the suitcase whispering, "Bomb? Drugs? Weapons inside?" But no one could have imagined the truth would be far worse. And when the zipper was finally pulled, the entire airport wished they'd never seen what was inside, because what lay there stopped their world in its tracks. Stay with us, because this story will leave you speechless. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'm really curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. It was a busy morning at LAX filled with the sound of rolling suitcases, taxis pulling up non-stop and streams of people flooding into Terminal 4 like an endless current. In the middle of that chaos appeared Ray Donovan, with his Hells Angels South Coast Riders crew, Burly Sloan, heavily bearded Duke, quick-witted Maria Gearhead Lopez, and most striking of all, Ranger, the retired military German shepherd who had become the four-legged heart of the chapter. Ray, a former U.S. Army K-9 handler, ran his hand down Ranger's back out of habit as the group waited to pick up a returning member. Their presence made some passengers glance over warily, but no one dwelled on it long. Everyone was busy with their own flights. Ranger walked calmly beside Ray until he suddenly froze in the flow of people, ears straight up, eyes straining as if trying to see through the air itself. Before Ray could react, Ranger let out a deep growl and bolted toward a blue suitcase sitting alone at the curb, no tag, no owner nearby, looking abandoned. In an instant, Ranger lunged and clawed desperately at the bag, each swipe of his paws frantic to tear it open at any cost. His barking echoed across the drop-off area, so sharp that a group of passengers jumped and screamed, instinctively stepping back. A TSA agent immediately ran over, waving people away and trying to figure out what was happening, while Duke and Sloan instinctively spread out to keep the crowd from pushing in. But Ray knew better than anyone. Ranger only acted like this when he smelled a life running out of time. He gripped the leash tighter, feeling the dog's body trembling in waves, screaming that something awful was inside that suitcase. Ranger kept letting out choked, pained whines, each claw at the blue suitcase so forceful the bag shook and slid slightly on the concrete. Ray braced both hands on the leash, heels dragging as the dog nearly pulled him forward, his entire body coiled like a spring about to snap, his warrior instincts roaring that a life was fading right in front of him. At first, passengers only glanced over curiously, but when Ranger's barks turned sharp, urgent, and broken like an emergency signal, the atmosphere changed instantly. A man raised his phone to record. A woman pulled her daughter close. Someone shouted, "Is that a bomb?" sending a few people into a panic, shoving their own bags as they fled the area. Panic spread down Terminal 4, faces tense, steps retreating on instinct. Two TSA agents in high-visibility vests rushed in, arms raised. "Step back." Everyone stepped back now, pushing the crowd away from the blue suitcase. Right behind them came a middle-aged supervisor, frowning as he took in the Hells Angels with their red and white patches, tattooed arms, and worn leather cuts surrounding the bag. He eyed Ranger, Ray, then Sloan, Duke, and Maria with deep suspicion, as if they were the cause of the chaos instead of the ones keeping the area secure. A younger TSA agent radioed, "Possible suspicious device at Terminal 4, request LAPD backup," because from a distance it looked like a standoff between bikers and airport security. Ray immediately pulled out his wallet, held up his old but clear K-9 handler, U.S. Army card, and said straight to the supervisor, "Listen, sir, Ranger never false alerts. I worked with him in active duty. When he reacts like this, it's not drugs or fireworks. It's a life he smells." The supervisor narrowed his eyes. "Dogs don't react like that for humans inside luggage. That's not how our protocol reads. We can't just assume there's a person in there because your dog is upset." He signaled an agent to drag the bag away to establish a safety perimeter, but Ranger instantly growled, lunged between them and the suitcase, teeth bared but not biting, barking short, sharp bursts right in their faces. "Don't touch it unless you're opening it." The agent stumbled back, and people in the crowd screamed. Sloan angled his Harley sideways. Duke did the same on the opposite side, forming a barrier between the crowd and the suitcase. Maria turned, pointed, and shouted firmly, "Move back to the wall, folks. Give TSA some room. You're safer back there." And even though many still eyed her cautiously, they obeyed. A mother clutching her daughter, eyes red with fear, glanced at Ray calming Ranger, and suddenly realized the people she thought would cause trouble were the only ones standing firm in the chaos. While TSA debated sealing off the drop-off zone and calling the bomb squad, which meant waiting at least 20 or 30 minutes, Ray was close to exploding. He stepped forward, pointed at Ranger clawing frantically at the suitcase, and shouted, "She doesn't have 30 minutes. That's not a bomb alert. This is a life alert. Look at his posture." The supervisor turned and studied Ranger more closely. The dog wasn't frozen in place like K9s trained to signal explosives, nor sniffing and wagging like for narcotics. He was clawing repeatedly at one spot, scratches coming in rhythmic bursts, each followed by short, urgent barks, while his whole body shook. Ray spoke loudly, as if teaching TSA and everyone who'd never seen a K9 react this way. "Explosives alert." He freezes, sits and stares. "Narcotics." He sniffs and wags. But when a human is dying, he claws, he barks in intervals, and he trembles like that. I've seen it pulling people out of collapsed buildings. That's the same reaction. The entire area fell silent, except for Ranger's labored breathing and the sound of his claws scraping fabric. The supervisor pressed his lips together. "If we open a potential explosive without bomb squad, we violate every protocol we have. If that's a device and it goes off, we're done." Ray took another half step. "If you don't open it and there's a child inside, you violate every moral protocol you've ever sworn to uphold." The younger TSA agent watched Ranger whine like he was crying, swallowed hard. "Sir, I think he's right. I've never seen a dog look like that." The supervisor glanced at him, then back at Ranger. The dog was no longer just a tool. He was a living being pleading the only way he knew how. Claws, choked barks, muscles shaking in waves. Ray knelt beside Ranger, placed his calloused hand on the dog's back, feeling every frantic breath, the same breath he'd heard when they pulled survivors from rubble, the time's almost up breath. He looked up, voice low but sharp. "If you wait for bomb squad, you'll be opening a body bag, not a suitcase." Silence fell. Finally, the supervisor took a deep breath and gave the order. "Prepare an emergency opening. Everyone stand back." The entire drop-off zone shifted. TSA rolled out portable barriers around the suitcase and moved passengers farther back. One agent turned to Ray, hesitated, then nodded. "You stay. Keep your dog steady. No one else touches him." Ray nodded. Ranger immediately jumped up to the edge of the temporary table, front paws on the rim, brown eyes locked on the blue suitcase, chest heaving with every rapid breath. Sloan, Duke, and Maria stepped back behind the barriers but never took their eyes off the scene. Passengers behind them held their breath, many covering their mouths. Terminal 4, usually the loudest part of the airport, suddenly became eerily quiet. A gloved TSA agent approached, grasped the zipper, paused, and looked at Ray one last time. Ray said nothing, just looked at Ranger, and saw pure desperation in the dog's eyes. The agent took a deep breath and slowly pulled the zipper. The zipper reached the end with a dry click. The lid flipped fully open, revealing a dark void like the mouth of a bottomless cave. And in that moment, all of Terminal 4 fell into absolute silence, so quiet you could hear your own tense breathing. The airport lights poured down, illuminating what was inside. A little girl about 2 years old, her tiny body folded into a position no one could survive for more than minutes, let alone hours. Legs bound with cloth strips, wrists bruised, face purple, lips cracked and dry, eyes swollen from crying herself unconscious. A choked sob broke from somewhere in the crowd, followed by a woman stammering, "Oh my God, no, no, that's a baby," and a wave of horror spread like lightning. People covered their mouths. Several passengers burst into tears. An elderly man nearby shook his head in disbelief, but no one reacted faster than Ranger. The dog lunged forward with raw instinct, letting out a long, strangled whine like his throat was being crushed. He buried his nose against the child's leg, then threw his head back and let out a heartbreaking howl. Ray had never heard from him since the battlefield. a howl of pain, fear, and warning that the life in front of him was slipping into the abyss. Ranger shook violently, breathing fast, every muscle rigid as if trying to hold a soul from drifting away. Ray dropped to his knees beside them, hand trembling as he slipped 2 fingers under the girl's jaw to check for a pulse. He wasn't sure he wanted the answer, but when he felt a faint beat so weak he thought it might be his imagination, he exhaled sharply, almost breaking. "She's alive," he said, but it sounded more like a desperate prayer than relief. Sloan, the huge man everyone feared, stepped forward, face drained of color. He bent down, and with a gentleness no one would expect from a tattooed biker, slid his arm under the child's back and lifted her as carefully as the most fragile glass doll. "Jesus, she's freezing," he whispered, then spun around and roared so loud the whole drop-off zone shook. "Paramedics, we need them now." A nearby TSA agent, face ash white, took off running while the supervisor stood frozen, hands shaking. Maria Gearhead, who had just been directing the crowd, couldn't hold back tears as she watched the little girl curled in a way that looked like one hard touch would shatter her bones. Ranger stayed glued to Sloane's legs, whimpering with every breath, eyes wet, and the passengers who minutes earlier had avoided the bikers now stood silent, watching a dog rest his head against Sloane's side as if begging the man to keep the child from disappearing. A young father nearby whispered, voice shaking, "That dog knew. He knew before any of us," and another woman sobbed, "He saved her, that dog saved her." When the paramedics arrived with the stretcher, Sloane gently lowered the girl, his hands shaking worse than the time he'd been injured on the highway last year. A female paramedic slipped a tiny oxygen mask over the child's face, shook her head and whispered, "Her oxygen levels are crashing. We need to move now." Ranger tried to push forward as they lifted her onto the stretcher. Ray had to wrap an arm around his neck and hold him gently. "Easy, Ranger, they'll help her." But the dog never took his eyes off the little girl, his eyes bloodshot with pain he couldn't voice. As the stretcher was wheeled away, the child let out one very weak, very faint breath, almost dissolving into the air. Sloane placed a hand on Ray's shoulder, voice hoarse. "Ray, if she lives, it's because of Ranger." Ray swallowed the lump in his throat. He knew before all of us he felt life slipping away, and as the paramedics pushed the stretcher through the automatic doors, many passengers broke into open sobs, not from fear anymore, but from the shock of witnessing something unimaginable in a major airport. A child stuffed into a suitcase like nameless cargo, and a dog, judged harsh because he rode with bikers, being the only creature who heard her silent cry for help. The doors closed, leaving Ray, Sloane, Maria, Duke and Ranger standing motionless in the now empty drop-off zone. Sirens wailed in the distance, slicing through the paralyzed air of Terminal 4 like a blade. And seconds later the ambulance screeched to a halt right in front of the Hells Angels. The back doors flew open. 2 paramedics jumped out with the stretcher and took the tiny shivering girl wrapped in a thin thermal blanket. Ray didn't think twice. He yelled at Sloane and Duke, "Clear the lane, make way for them," and instantly Harley engines roared like thunder. Duke, usually the calm one, cracked the throttle so hard his rear tire spun in place. He shot toward the curb lane bellowing, "Move, ambulance coming through," forcing the famously stubborn LA drivers to pull aside and create a path. Sloane rode parallel to the ambulance, waving frantically for cars to inch over. Maria planted her Harley dead center in the airport exit, physically blocking the oncoming taxis. The same people who had feared them minutes ago now stepped aside in awe, because they finally understood these tattooed bikers weren't causing trouble. They were fighting second by second to keep a tiny life from slipping into darkness. The ambulance doors slammed shut. A paramedic shouted, "Go, go now," and the rig took off. Ray vaulted into the seat beside the stretcher, Ranger leaping in before anyone could stop him. One paramedic started to protest, but when she saw Ranger trembling with worry for the child, she nodded. "Fine, just keep him steady." Ranger didn't need telling. He immediately climbed up beside the stretcher and laid his head against the little girl's side, as if trying to hold her fading lifeline with his own warmth. The child, Lily, the name Ray and a few others had just heard the paramedics use, wheezed with every breath like knives scraping her lungs. Ray stared at the monitor as the heart rate line dipped, jumped weakly, then dipped again. Sweat broke out on his forehead. "Stay with us, sweetheart. Stay with us," he said, voice shaking without realizing it. The paramedics started bagging her. One hooked up an IV, another warmed her legs. Ranger let out a long, broken whine that sounded like his own heart was cracking with every ragged breath she took. He gently licked the back of her tiny hand, and somehow the monitor jumped a little higher, as if Lily felt him there. Outside, Duke led the way like a steel arrow cutting through Los Angeles traffic that never moves. Yet today cars parted in front of his roaring Harley. Drivers rolled down windows and gasped. "It's the Hells Angels, they're escorting the ambulance." One man in an SUV muttered, "Jesus, I never thought I'd see that." The ambulance leaned into a turn onto the main road to County General. Inside, Ray gripped the rail, eyes locked on Lily. "She's getting colder," a paramedic said, voice tight, blood pressure dropping. Ranger pressed even closer, body shaking with stress, hot breath warming her arm, as if giving away his last heat. Ray put a hand on Ranger's neck. "Easy, boy. She needs you calm." But his own hand was ice cold. A paramedic suddenly barked, "Prepare for possible respiratory arrest." Ray felt his heart drop straight to the floor. He'd watched brothers fall on battlefields, heard last breaths of soldiers, but nothing had ever choked him with terror like this. A child no bigger than one of Ranger's hugs lying in front of him. The rig bounced hard over a pothole. Lily gave the weakest hiccup. Her eyes fluttered open for half a second as if searching for light, then closed again. "Stay awake, Lily. Stay awake," Ray repeated like a prayer. The monitor hit red alert. The paramedic shouted, "She's crashing." Ranger suddenly lifted his head and let out one short, piercing bark, the final alarm of a rescuer's instinct. Lily drew one more tiny gasp, her chest trembling, then went limp again. Ray leaned close, voice breaking. "We're almost there, sweetheart. Hold on for us." The ambulance whipped into the ER bay. Outside, Sloan and Duke skidded to smoking stops, jumped off and cleared a path as paramedics pulled the stretcher out. Maria sprinted ahead to the hospital doors yelling, "Make way, child in critical condition." The crowd parted like water. Ranger leaped down after the stretcher, whining desperately as medical staff rushed Lily through the emergency doors, able only to watch as the doors closed behind her. Ray held his neck and whispered, "We got her here, now it's up to them." But Ranger never took his eyes off the automatic doors that had just swallowed the fragile life he'd fought to save. The ER hallway had barely gone quiet after the alarms when the doors to the treatment area closed, leaving Ray and Ranger rooted outside, hearts still racing from the chase. Just over an hour later, they were transferred to UCLA Medical Center, where Lily was taken to the pediatric ICU. The space here was quieter, the lights warmer gold, but nothing eased Ray's tension like seeing Ranger still lying right against the door, head resting on his front paws, eyes unblinking, watching the place where the little girl fought for every breath. Then, unexpectedly, amid the steady beeping and dim room light, a tiny movement made Ray bolt upright. Lily's finger twitched. The nurse on duty gasped, "Oh my God, she's responding." The whole room held its breath as the nurse gently lifted the breathing tube to recheck. Lily's eyelids fluttered, then opened the tiniest slit, as if her eyes weren't used to the light of coming back. A broken breath escaped her pale lips, and a second later Ray heard Ranger's claws scrape the floor. He was already on his feet. Ranger tilted his head, ears straight up, then walked slowly toward the bed, each step careful so his nails wouldn't startle her. The nurse started to stop him, but Ray quietly shook his head. "It's okay, let him." Ranger placed his front paws on the bed rail and lowered his head gently. His warm breath touched the little girl's arm, and right then, Lily opened her eyes wider. Someone in the room dropped a pen from pure shock. She looked around, confused for a few seconds, then her gaze locked on the familiar creature her instincts had held onto like the last light before darkness. And in a raspy whisper like wind through leaves, she breathed, "Doggy." Just one word. One tiny trembling word, but enough to make the entire room break into tears. Ranger let out a soft, low whine, warm and comforting, then gently touched his nose to her shaking hand as if answering, "Yes, it's me. I never left you." Lily tried to lift her tiny fingers and place them on Ranger's head, a touch so weak it barely existed, but to Ranger it was the whole world rushing back. The nurse beside the bed wiped tears away and smiled through them. "I've never seen a child wake up because they heard their pet, but today is a miracle." Ray let out a long breath, his whole body going limp as the weight he'd carried for hours finally lifted. He bent down, hand on Ranger's back, and whispered, "Good job, boy, you called her back." Lily took a few quick breaths, then whispered again, eyes never leaving Ranger, "Doggy, Stay. Ranger immediately lay down beside the bed, head resting against her side as if he'd been waiting for exactly those words. The nurse turned to Ray, voice thick. I don't know what happened at the airport, but she just named her savior, and in that moment, among IV lines, blinking monitors, and the smell of antiseptic, one thing was crystal clear to everyone. The little girl had come back. News that Lily was awake spread faster than anyone expected, and only 15 minutes after the nurse left the room, frantic footsteps echoed down the UCLA Medical Center hallway so urgently that doctors turned to look. A woman with wild hair, red eyes, and gasping breaths, as if she'd run all the way from Santa Monica, burst into the pediatric ICU. My baby? Lily, where is she? She screamed, voice breaking with desperation. Ray and Ranger turned just in time to see her collapse to her knees in the doorway, hands clawing the floor as if she couldn't bear the weight of the fear she'd carried for hours. When her eyes found the tiny figure on the bed, alive, breathing, moving, her legs gave out completely and a nurse had to catch her. Lily, oh God, you're alive, you're alive. Amanda Hayes practically crawled to the bedside, clutching her daughter's little hand and sobbing uncontrollably, the raw cries of a mother who thought her heart had been ripped in two on the Santa Monica beach. Lily opened her eyes, looked half recognizing, half dazed, and trembled. Mommy? Amanda buried her face in her daughter's hand, choking out, It's Mommy. I'm here, baby. I never stopped looking for you. Ray stepped back to give them the sacred moment, but Ranger stepped forward, head lowered as if asking permission. Amanda looked up, tear-filled eyes meeting the loyal gaze of the dog. Without needing any explanation, a mother's instinct made her reach out. She pulled Ranger into her arms like a second child. It was you. You saved my little girl? She choked, face buried in his soft, trembling fur. Ranger gently licked her wrist as if to say, yes, she's safe now. Amanda looked at Ray, tears streaming down her chin. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know what to say. I thought I'd lost her forever. Ray placed a hand on her shoulder, voice low and gentle. We just did what was right. The one who saved her is Ranger. Amanda looked at Ranger again, then suddenly sobbed harder, holding him like she was afraid to let go and discover it was all a dream. After a long moment, when she could breathe again, she shakily told them, we were at Santa Monica Pier. I bent down to tie my shoe for 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. And when I looked up, Lily was gone. She covered her face, voice shaking with guilt. I screamed. I ran the whole beach. I pushed through crowds, but no one saw anything. No one heard my baby cry. Ray asked softly. No witnesses. Nobody saw someone carrying her away. Amanda shook her head, lips trembling. One, a woman, big coat, hooded, walking fast past the games area. A kid selling balloons said she was holding a little girl, but by the time I got there they were gone. Police said it might be a trafficker, but, God, I couldn't believe that. At those words, Ranger lifted his head, ears pricked, looking at Ray as if he understood the story was only the tip of the iceberg. Amanda forced herself to continue, every word cutting her throat. I don't know where she was all those hours. I only know when they called and said they found a child in a suitcase. I thought it had to be her. Or, she choked, or worse, her body. Ray squeezed her shoulder gently. Lily is stronger than any of us knew, and Ranger wouldn't let the worst happen. Amanda looked down at her daughter, breathing weakly but steadily in her arms. She softly sang a broken lullaby, voice shattered with emotion. Lily closed her eyes, lips moving, still holding on to Ranger. The nurse nearby wiped tears and whispered, I've seen a lot, but nothing like this. Amanda looked at Ranger, voice fierce despite the tremble. I will never leave her side again. And, I want to know, who did this? Who stuffed a child into a suitcase like that? Ray answered slowly. We want to know too, and we will find out. Ranger rested his head on the edge of the bed, deep brown eyes burning with the same determination to keep protecting the little girl. And in that moment, as the mother's tears fell onto Ranger's fur, one truth shone clearer than ever. This was no longer just a rescue. It had become the mission of those who never turn their backs on the darkness. While Amanda was still clutching Lily to her chest as if letting go for even a second would make her vanish again, the hospital room door opened and 2 LAPD officers walked in, faces so serious that both Ray and Sloan, who had just come up after handling security desk paperwork, stood straight up on reflex. The lead female officer spoke. I'm Lieutenant Foster, LAPD Missing Persons. We need to talk right now about the LAX footage. Amanda gripped Lily tighter and whispered, LAX cameras, did they find something? Foster nodded, glanced around the room and spoke fast. We pulled every camera from the Terminal 4 drop-off. The person who brought the blue suitcase wasn't a stranger. It wasn't traffickers. It wasn't any organization. Sloan frowned. Duke crossed his arms, and Ray narrowed his eyes. He didn't like where this was going. Foster opened her tablet, tapped the video, and instantly camera 14 footage appeared. A woman in a black hoodie, head down, pulling the rolling blue suitcase. She stopped at the curb, looked around nervously, set the bag down, touched the handle one last time, then backed into the crowd and disappeared. Amanda stared, body going rigid. "Slow it down," Foster ordered. The image zoomed in on the woman's face as she looked up for half a second. Streetlights caught her cheekbones, revealing features that were terrifyingly familiar. Amanda immediately covered her mouth and doubled over like she'd been punched in the gut. "Oh God, no. No way." Ray turned to her, voice low. "Amanda, you know her?" Amanda shook her head frantically, but tears were already pouring. "Vanessa? Oh God, that's Vanessa." Sloan frowned. "Which Vanessa?" Amanda choked out. "My half-sister, she used to love Lily so much." "How could she?" Foster continued. "Our analysis confirms the person who brought the suitcase to the airport is Vanessa Hayes, age 26. History of postpartum depression and obsessive attachment disorder. Lost her job 3 weeks ago, cut off all family contact, and neighbors reported her saying Lily is the child that's really mine." Amanda looked like she'd been struck by lightning, shaking violently. No, that can't be. Vanessa would never, she loves her." Ray put a hand on Amanda's shoulder. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we miss the warning signs in." But before Amanda could answer, Ranger, who had been lying beside Lily the whole time, suddenly jumped up. He let out a low growl, ears pinned forward, eyes locked on the screen, as if he recognized the familiar scent of danger. Foster flinched slightly. "The dog. He's reacting to the video?" Ray nodded, unsurprised. "Ranger can identify threats, even in a picture." Ranger growled again, deeper this time, the same guttural sound he'd made when he first found the suitcase. He stepped closer to the tablet and touched the screen with his nose. Foster looked at Ray and lowered her voice. "That means Vanessa being there when the bag was abandoned isn't just probable cause. With this dog, it's confirmation." Duke clenched his jaw. "Damn it. So this isn't trafficking. It's..." Ray finished coldly. "A family member gone off the rails." Amanda burst into loud sobs. "No, Vanessa isn't evil. She gets unstable sometimes. But she used to rock Lily to sleep, hold her for hours." Foster sat beside Amanda, voice professional but compassionate. "Amanda, instability can go way beyond what family sees, especially with emotional possession disorders." Vanessa's file shows diary entries saying, "If I can't be a mom, I'll be Lily's mom." We believe she acted in a distorted mental state, not fully aware of the consequences. Amanda choked. "But stuffing a child in a suitcase, how could she?" Sloan growled through clenched teeth. "Point as she did." Foster looked at Ray and the Hells Angels, then continued. "Cameras show Vanessa took a taxi to the airport at 5:42 a.m. After abandoning the suitcase, she went to parking level 3 and vanished. We haven't traced the vehicle she left in." Ranger growled again, alert. Not at the video, but at the pain in Amanda's voice. He walked over and laid his head on her knee, as if saying, "You're not carrying this alone." Amanda stroked him through sobs. "If it weren't for you, Lily would have..." Ray scanned the room, eyes shifting to the cold focus of a soldier recognizing a new mission. "We have footage. We have a trail. Now we just find Vanessa before she does something worse." Foster nodded. "LAPD is widening the search, but..." She looked at Ranger, then at the bikers behind Ray. "You people have instincts and response speed we can't match right now. Honestly, if you're willing to work with us, we need your help." Sloan smirked. "You want bikers partnering with LAPD?" Foster answered without hesitation. "Today you saved a child. I trust you'll help bring the person who hurt her to justice." Ray put a hand on Ranger's head, eyes hard with resolve. "We don't leave a search unfinished. If Vanessa is out there hiding..." Ranger gave a low growl as if answering for him. "We'll find her." And in that moment, everyone understood. The investigation had officially turned. No more shadowy trafficking ring. No more stranger criminals. The one who created this nightmare shared Hayes' blood. The second Foster left the room to finalize the APB Ray pulled out his phone and opened the private Hells Angels South Coast Riders channel within seconds. The screen lit up with messages from neighboring chapters like a war machine. Waking from years of sleep. Riverside here. Freeway camera caught a woman in black fleeing LAX at dawn. Orange County reporting. Convenience store in Anaheim had a girl matching the description. Pale, panicked eyes. Bought water and headed south. Long Beach chapter checking in. One of our riders saw a Honda Civic with covered plates driving evasive. Information poured in from all over Southern California so fast that Foster, who was used to the slow grind of official procedure, stood stunned and said, "I've never seen a network move like this." Sloan grinned. Hells Angels isn't a club, it's family. And family doesn't let a child abductor walk. Meanwhile, Ranger stood beside the sealed blue suitcase LAPD had taken into evidence. Ray knelt, opened the evidence bag containing a few strands of Lily's hair and scraps of her clothing pulled from the suitcase. "Ranger," Ray said quietly, voice dead serious like he was briefing a special ops soldier, "find Vanessa. Find the one who put Lily in the dark." Ranger inhaled deeply, ears up, body taut as a drawn bow. He circled the suitcase a few times, then suddenly spun and bolted for the door with a sharp bark. Ray jumped up. "He's got a direction." LAPD, Sloan, Duke, and Maria ran after him. Hospital corridors echoed with pounding boots, but Ranger stayed in front like an invisible leash was pulling him. In the parking lot, he shot straight to Ray's Harley and stood beside it as if giving orders. Duke laughed. "Kid wants to ride shotgun. Hop on, Ranger." Ray swung a leg over. Ranger leapt cleanly into the front position and planted his feet like he'd trained for it his whole life. Ray's Harley roared to life with a thunderous roar that shook the whole lot and made the two LAPD officers jump. Foster yelled, "Wait, hold on. We need to form up. Call it in." Maria snapped her helmet on and cut her off. "That takes 3 minutes. Vanessa isn't waiting 3 minutes." Ray looked at Foster through his visor. "You want her found? Then follow us." A second later, 5 Harleys roared out of UCLA, kicking up a dust cloud while the LAPD patrol cars scrambled to keep up. Ranger leaned into the wind, sniffing constantly, then suddenly shifted his weight left. Ray read him instantly and cranked the bars. Century Boulevard. Down toward Inglewood. Sloan behind him shouted, "He's tracking from the freeway?" Ray yelled back, "No, from the wind. He's catching the trace still clinging to Vanessa's hands from the suitcase." LAPD radio crackled. "Dispatch, South Coast Riders are leading. Speed 70 miles per hour. No idea what they're following, but we think they're right." LA traffic is usually hell frozen over, but today the thunder of Harleys acted like a warning siren, and drivers swerved aside. A guy in a van pointed and shouted, "Holy shit, Hells Angels escorting cops." The guy next to him answered, "No, they're hunting someone." The pack sliced through every gap like water through rock until Ranger barked sharply and Ray braked hard, sliding to the curb near Hyde Park. "Lost the scent?" Foster asked as LAPD caught up. Ranger circled, sniffed the ground, then shot straight toward a small gas station half a block away. Duke rolled up first and blocked the entrance. The Mexican owner threw his hands up. "Hey, we don't want trouble." Ray flashed the temporary LAPD credential they'd just issued him. "Looking for a woman in black alone, looks disturbed. Carrying a backpack or box." The owner's eyes went wide. "She was here 10 minutes ago. Bought gas. Hands shaking bad. Eyes red like she'd been crying forever. She said, 'I didn't want to do it, but I have to go. They'll take my baby,' then jumped in an old Civic and headed toward Hawthorne." Sloan cursed, "Definitely Vanessa." Ranger suddenly growled and took a step back, as if smelling the fear and twisted psyche that had stuffed Lily into that suitcase. Ray stroked his head. "Easy, buddy. We'll get her." LAPD immediately radioed. "Suspect heading Hawthorne. El Segundo. Set up blocks." But Foster looked at Ray and said, "We might set the blocks, but the ones who'll reach her first are you." Ray fired the bike up. Ranger let out a short howl of confirmation. Sloan, Duke, Maria fell in line. LAPD followed. But it was obvious, the bikers who read the streets like the back of their hands, led by a war dog with a nose for danger, were always going to hit the hot zone faster than any official unit. The roar echoed down Crenshaw Boulevard, announcing a hunt, not for vengeance, but to stop a soul that had lost its way inside its own warped love. The instant Ranger gave his alert howl, he shot south like a living arrow. dragging Ray and the whole convoy of Harleys and LAPD cruisers after him, into Inglewood, where narrow streets twisted like a maze and flickering streetlights painted patches of darkness. No one wanted to walk alone. When they reached the residential area near Manchester Avenue, Ranger leapt off the bike the second Ray braked and bolted to a metal dumpster sitting crooked under a streetlight pole. Sloan barely got off his bike before covering his nose. "What the hell is that smell?" But Ranger growled low and pawed hard at the lid like he wanted whatever was inside dragged out. Ray approached, cautiously lifted the lid, and instantly the stench of plastic and stale sweat hit them. Inside was a tiny pink children's shirt, small enough for a 2-year-old. Amanda recognized it immediately, her heart twisting. "Oh God, that's Lily's, the one she was wearing yesterday." Foster frowned. Why would Vanessa dump the shirt, trying to destroy evidence? Or, Ray picked it up. The scent from the fabric made Ranger tremble and whine deep in his throat. Then yank Ray forward. "He's got it again. Follow him," Ray shouted. The whole group ran after Ranger as he tore through a dark alley strung with power lines like spider webs. LAPD flashed lights. Harleys killed engines to stay quiet, only the sound of Ranger's paws hitting wet concrete. At the end of the alley, moonlight revealed an abandoned parking lot, the old lot of a demolished apartment complex. Moss and weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete. Wind whistled through warped chain link, carrying a strange chill that made Maria shiver. Something feels wrong here. And right then Ranger froze. His whole body went rigid, hackles razor sharp. Ray instantly held Maria back. "Don't move. He smells something dangerous." Sloan swept his flashlight and stopped on the far corner. "Ray, look." An old silver sedan sat under a thin, filthy tarp, so dirty it looked like part of the trash heap. But the front tire was still warm. Ray touched it and felt heat pouring off. "This car hasn't been here long," he said. Duke whispered. "Vanessa's close." Ranger advanced slowly, teeth slightly bared. Not aggression, but warning. Foster signaled the 2 LAPD officers. "Spread out, cover exits. Don't approach the car until Ray and the dog clear the air." Ray nodded and moved forward with Ranger at his side. Ranger sniffed near the edge of the tarp, inhaled deep, and suddenly jerked his head back like he'd been hit with pepper spray. He let out a sharp, angry bark and spun, planting his body between Ray and the car. "He's warning us," Sloan whispered. "Could be a trap," Foster ordered. "Fall back, now." But as LAPD stepped back, Ranger shifted his gaze, not to the car anymore, but left, toward a row of doors leading to the basement of the old complex. A tall metal door, paint peeling, cracked open just an inch. Wind pushed it and it creaked. Ranger whined low, crept forward, ears maxed, then looked at Ray as if saying, "She's down there." Ray followed his line of sight and narrowed his eyes. Vanessa could be hiding below. Foster frowned. Abandoned basement. No lights, no cameras. Perfect place to. Amanda choked. "Disappear." Ray looked at Ranger. "Good, but careful. It's dangerous down there." Ranger answered with a deep chest growl. He understood. He was ready. And that was exactly what made the air feel heavy enough to suffocate. Sloan whispered. "Ray, I got a bad feeling this isn't just hiding. Vanessa, she's spiraling. Push her too hard, and she might." Ray clenched his jaw. "Do something stupid." "I know." Flashlight beams swept the concrete, catching mud streaks and faint shoe prints. Proof someone had just gone down. Foster bit her lip. "If she's panicking down there, we have to approach extremely carefully." Ray placed a hand on Ranger's head. "Lead the way, buddy. But slow. No one else gets hurt." The group stood at the mouth of a pitch-black stairwell that swallowed every bit of light. Danger settled over them like a thick curtain. Ranger lowered his body and stepped cautiously down each stair, Ray right beside him, Sloan, Duke, Maria, and the 2 LAPD officers covering the rear. The moment the basement stairs ended, Ranger suddenly veered sideways, not plunging deeper but turning back toward the parking lot. Ray understood instantly. The scent had shifted. "She's not down there," Ray shouted. "Different direction." The whole group spun around and hurried back to the surface. The second they emerged from the stairwell mouth, Ranger shot across the cracked pavement straight to the tarp-covered silver sedan. This time he wasn't warning of a trap. He attacked the door edge directly, barking non-stop, claws ripping so hard the tarp shook like something underneath was trying to breathe. "Ranger, stop," Ray called, but the dog wouldn't back off. He growled deep, brown eyes blazing with fear and fury, telling everyone. Inside was the direct threat. the person he had tracked by instinct all the way from LAX. Sloan stepped up and yanked the tarp off. It fell away, revealing the old sedan with fogged rear windows. Flashlight beams swept inside, and Amanda collapsed to her knees when she saw Vanessa's face pressed against the glass, eyes wide, bloodshot, and so unhinged she barely resembled the sister Amanda once knew. In Vanessa's arms was a tiny jacket, Lily's old fleece. She clutched it to her chest like it was her own life. Her body shook violently, breath ragged, mumbling, "Nobody gets to take her from me. Nobody, Lily is mine, mine." Amanda sobbed. "Vanessa, what are you doing? Please open the door." Vanessa jerked, whipped around, face twisted with panic and obsession that had swallowed her reason. "Amanda," she let out a dry, broken laugh cry. "You came, but you're too late. Way too late. She'll never be yours again." She called me. She hugged me. "She's mine," Ray muttered. Severe psychotic break. "She can't tell reality from delusion anymore," Foster whispered. "Don't agitate her, Amanda. Let me handle it." But Amanda pushed forward one step. "Vanessa, listen to me. Lily is alive. She needs you to wake up. You're not her mother. You can't save her if you hurt yourself." Vanessa burst into loud, glass-shattering laughter. "You always took everything from me. Dad, the house. Now Lily, you were always the good one, and I was always the leftover. But Lily, she made me feel worth something. She's the one who needs me," Ranger growled, a pained, not aggressive sound, as if rejecting the twisted words. Vanessa, startled, stared at Ranger. Then her eyes went wild. You always get in the way. You took her from me." She lunged for the door handle, unlocked it, and tried to bolt out like someone desperate to run into the dark. Sloan and Duke didn't draw weapons or threaten. They simply stepped forward and blocked the exit like a steel wall built from loyalty. Sloan said softly but firmly, "No running, Vanessa. Nobody here came to kill you, but you're not hurting anyone else. Get out of my way." Vanessa screamed, shoving Sloan with both hands like trying to move a mountain. Duke stood beside him, voice low. "We don't hit women, but we don't let anyone hurt kids either." Ray stepped closer, hand open toward Vanessa. "Vanessa, you're in a mental health crisis. You need help. Let us take you somewhere safe." But what stopped Vanessa wasn't Ray's words. It was Ranger. The dog stood in the middle of the lot, neither advancing nor retreating, just looking at her with eyes that held no hate, only pained vigilance, as if he understood she wasn't evil, just lost. Vanessa stared into those eyes for a long time, lips trembling. Why are you looking at me like that? You hate me, right? You want me gone, right?" Ray answered quietly. "He doesn't hate you, but he knows you almost killed Lily." That was the final crack. Vanessa's face crumpled. She let Lily's jacket fall from her arms and sobbed like a child. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her with me. Just wanted someone to need me."
Amanda choked out.
"Vanessa, you need help, not a child." Foster stepped forward, gentle but serious. "Vanessa Hayes, you are under arrest for child abduction, endangerment, and concealment of a victim. Put your hands out." Vanessa looked around, lips shaking, then let her arms drop, exhausted. No fight left. The LAPD officers cuffed her, but Foster kept her voice soft. "We'll make sure you get mental health treatment. But first, you have to answer for this." As Vanessa was led past Ranger, she stopped for a second. Ranger stood still, no growl, no bark, just looked. Vanessa whispered,
"I'm sorry."
Ranger answered with one low, decisive bark that closed the hunt and confirmed the nightmare was over. Ray put a hand on his head and sighed.
"Good job, Ranger. We're done."
Sloan fired up his Harley. Duke glanced at Ray and said, "Now let's get back to little Lily." And as the bikers and LAPD left the Inglewood lot, red and blue lights swept the pavement like they were washing away the last of the darkness. Ranger jumped onto Ray's bike, heading for UCLA Medical Center, where the life he had fought for all day was waiting. The chase was over. The healing had only just begun. On the ride downtown to LAPD headquarters, Vanessa didn't fight or scream. She just sat silently in the back of the cruiser, head down like an empty shell of herself. In the interview room, the cold white lights reflected off her pale face and eyes, red and sunken from days of panic. Foster started the recorder. Ray and Ranger were allowed to watch from behind the one-way glass while Amanda, despite wanting to be there, had to stay with Lily. Vanessa's hands trembled on the table, cuffs removed because she showed no danger. An officer asked gently, "Vanessa, do you understand why you're here?" Vanessa shook her head slowly. tears dry but eyes still brimming. I don't know anymore. I just know everything slipped away. Lily was the only thing left that made me feel real. Foster sat across from her. Vanessa, we need you to start from the beginning. What happened at Santa Monica Pier? Vanessa hugged her own arms, nails digging into skin. I saw Amanda smiling with her. Saw them have each other and nobody needed me. Nobody said my name. Nobody looked at me. But Lily always smiled at me. Always reached for me to pick her up. She started crying softly. I just wanted to keep her for a little while. Just a little while. Foster took notes. So you took Lily and left? Vanessa nodded. I carried her away from the crowd. She only asked, "Where's Mommy?" I said, "Mommy's coming right now." But then, I got scared. I heard Amanda calling. Heard people talking. I was afraid they'd think I kidnapped her. Afraid they'd take her back. Her hands shook so hard she had to grip the table. I never meant to hurt Lily. I swear. I just didn't know how to bring her back. I thought, if I took her far away, somewhere nobody knew me, I could start over. I could be a mom. Even just for a little bit. Foster asked, voice still calm but edged. And the suitcase? Why put a child in there? Vanessa clutched her head, sobbing with guilt. I was stupid. I panicked. I heard police sirens, thought they were coming for me. I didn't know where to hide her. I saw the suitcase. I just wanted to hide Lily for a minute. While I got water, got food. 5 minutes, only 5 minutes. Her voice shattered, but when I came back, I was too scared. I thought if I opened it someone would see. I thought I'd come back later when it was less crowded.
Foster set her pen down and looked her in the eye.
Vanessa, you left a 2-year-old unconscious in an airtight space with no ventilation, no water, and walked away. Vanessa screamed, I didn't want her to die. I swear, I just didn't know what I was doing anymore. The door opened, an officer placed the preliminary UCLA medical report in front of Foster. She read it, then looked at Vanessa, voice dropping. Lily suffered severe oxygen deprivation, critical hypothermia, and if she hadn't been found in those final 10 minutes, she wouldn't have survived. Vanessa froze, lips white. 10 minutes. Foster nodded. 10 minutes. And the only one who heard the last of her breaths was the Hells Angels dog. Vanessa's eyes flickered. For the first time she looked toward the glass as if searching for Ranger in the dark. Foster continued. The paramedic on scene said something I think you need to hear. She opened the report and read clearly. If that dog hadn't found her, she'd be gone. Vanessa crumpled forward, hands over her face, sobs exploding, chaotic, desperate, broken. I killed her. I was supposed to protect her. An officer said quietly, she's alive, but not because of you. Vanessa gasped for air. Outside, Ray watched. Ranger lay at his feet but never took his eyes off Vanessa. Ray said softly, he doesn't hate her, but he knows the truth. Foster recorded the final question. Vanessa, do you admit to taking Lily from Santa Monica Pier, hiding her in a suitcase, and abandoning that suitcase at LAX? Vanessa nodded, tears streaming. Yes, I admit it. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. The recorder clicked off, cuffs clicked on, but no one in the room felt victory, because the truth was colder than any charge. A desperate woman who wanted no ransom, backed by no organization, just an emptiness so deep, it turned love into obsession, and obsession into an act that almost stole a life. Ranger stood, nudged Ray's leg. Ray sighed. Come on, buddy, someone's waiting for us. And they left the interview room, leaving Vanessa collapsed under the weight of the truth she had just spoken. The truth that would have taken Lily from the world if not for a dog who heard the silence humans missed. Word that Vanessa had confessed spread through LAPD hallways in minutes. But word that Lily was out of danger spread through UCLA Medical Center even faster. And when Ray and Ranger returned to the hospital, Amanda was standing by her daughter's bed, eyes red but shining with hope brighter than the ICU lights. Lily looked pinker, breathing steadier, her tiny hand able to squeeze her mom's finger. When she saw Ray walk in with Ranger right behind him, Lily opened her eyes and a thread-thin smile appeared. Doggy, she whispered, so softly only those close could hear. Ranger instantly jumped up beside the bed and laid his head in her hand. Amanda burst into tears again, but this time from knowing her child had survived. Ray, I don't know how to thank you, she sobbed. All of you, you saved my baby. Ray shook his head gently. Not all of us, Ranger heard her calling. Amanda bent down and hugged Ranger, voice breaking. Thank you. Thank you. You brought my Lily back to me. The story exploded that same afternoon. Local news ran the shy run. Hell's Angels dog finds toddler locked in suitcase at LAX. A reporter outside the hospital said, "Today the people often mistaken for dangerous became heroes. People who once stepped away from the Hell's Angels at the airport now left flowers and thank you cards at the hospital entrance." Sloan stared at the piles of flowers and sighed. "We're getting flowers? Definitely not what I pictured when I joined the club." Maria laughed. "First time in my life people aren't running when they see us coming." Duke teased. "Don't get used to it. Tomorrow we're back to being society's outcasts." But their eyes all drifted to Ranger and softened. Foster came to the hospital that afternoon, not to question but to thank them. "You didn't just help us close a case," she said. "You saved a life our procedures couldn't have reached in time. Because of you, she's still here." Ray pointed at Ranger. "Thank him." Foster knelt and put a hand on Ranger's back. "Thank you, warrior." Ranger gave a soft whine and rubbed his head against her hand. The story went viral. Photos of Ranger lying beside Lily shared tens of thousands of times. One comment read, "I used to be scared of bikers. Today I know they have hearts." Another wrote, "If not for this dog, that little angel would be gone." Outside the hospital, a group held signs. "Thank you, Hell's Angels," and "Ranger, our hero dog." Amanda stood at the window looking down, eyes misty. "They finally get it. They get that people like you aren't the bad guys." Ray gave a sad smile. "We never needed them to understand. Just to do what's right." Amanda turned back to Lily sleeping peacefully and took Ray's hand. "And doing what's right saved my entire life." As dusk fell and golden light stretched across the room, Ranger lay pressed against Lily's bed, brown eyes watching every breath she took. Ray leaned against the wall, arms folded, his gaze softening in the rare moment of peace. And out there, whether the world knew it or remembered it or not, a new symbol had been born. Not the tough biker, but the dog who stood guard between life and death, the one who heard the cries humans missed. Ranger, once a military K9, had become the hero of a huge city too loud to hear a child's breath. But he heard, and he saved. And from that moment on, no one would ever look at the Hell's Angels the same way again. The next morning, when the doctor announced Lily was stable enough to move to recovery and could go home in a few days, Amanda came to the group of Hell's Angels waiting in the hallway holding a thick envelope, hands shaking. "I know just saying thank you isn't enough," she choked, placing the envelope in Ray's hand. "Please accept this small token of gratitude, because you saved my daughter, saved my whole life." Ray looked at the envelope, then at Amanda, eyes gentle but firm. He folded it and handed it back. "Amanda, we don't take money for doing what's right. If we had stood by that day, Lily wouldn't be here. Ranger did what he had to and we just followed." Sloan crossed his arms and nodded. "If you really want to thank us, let her grow up safe. That's plenty." Amanda burst into tears, covered her face for a long moment, then whispered, "You are so much better than people think." Inside the room, Lily was sitting up in bed, little legs dangling, Ranger lying beside her with his head on her lap like a living pillow. When she saw everyone come in, she beamed, cheeks pink again. "Doggy," she squealed, throwing her arms around his neck and burying her face in his fur. Ranger answered with a soft, happy whine, gently nudging her like comforting a child. Amanda watched and felt her heart squeeze with speechless gratitude. "She won't let him out of her sight," she said, wiping her eyes. "I think Ranger is her hero now." Ray laughed. "He's used to the job." A nurse came in to say they needed to take Lily for one last check before discharge. Ray knelt down. "Hey Lily, we gotta go now. Be good, okay?" But the second he said it, her tiny arms clamped tighter around Ranger's neck. "No, doggy, stay." Amanda gently pried her fingers loose. "Ranger has to go with Uncle Ray, sweetheart. But you'll see him again." Lily pouted, eyes filling, then hugged Ranger one more time and kissed his head. Every Hell's Angel standing there went quiet. Even the big, tattooed, road-hardened men who had lived half their lives in dust and noise. Sloan turned away, pretending to cough. "Man, someone turned the AC way up." Maria elbowed him, smiling but eyes red. Ranger licked Lily's hand one last time, stood, walked to Ray but kept looking back like he was afraid to make her sad. As the group reached the door, Lily stood up on the bed, raised both arms high and called in her clear little voice, "Bye-bye, doggy." The sound was small but carried far. like a goodbye from a child's heart to the friend who pulled her back from the edge of death. Ranger paused, turned and gave one soft bark, the rare affectionate sound he had only ever given Lily since the day they met. Amanda hugged her daughter and whispered, "You'll see him again, I promise." Ray pulled on his helmet, voice low but warm. "Anytime she needs us, we'll be back." Sloane, Duke and Maria lined up, gave Lily a respectful nod biker style, then turned and walked out. The roar of Harleys starting up outside the hospital sounded like a final farewell. And as the bikes rolled away from UCLA Medical Center, the little girl at the window kept waving, while Ranger, riding in front of Ray, looked back through the rear glass, brown eyes glowing with a gentle light rarely seen. A simple goodbye, but enough for everyone who saw it to understand. Some bonds are born from terror, fear, and tears, yet stronger than anything else in the world. A few weeks later, when Lily was fully recovered, and Amanda strong enough to step out of the dark days, the city of Santa Monica held a small gratitude ceremony right in front of the pier entrance, where the nightmare began, and where they wanted to end it with light. Little flags fluttered in the ocean breeze, children laughed, local news set up cameras, and residents formed a big circle, eager for the special guests. Then the familiar thunder of Harleys rolled in from the end of the street, like drums opening an unofficial ceremony. Hell's Angels South Coast riders entered the event area slow and solemn, Ray in front, Ranger riding proud in the front position on the big Harley, ears flapping, looking so majestic the crowd erupted in cheers. Sloane, Duke and Maria followed close, helmets hanging off the bars in respect. When they stopped, Lily, who had once lain in a cold suitcase, broke free from her mom's hand and ran toward Ranger on sturdy little legs, yelling, "Doggy." Ranger heard her voice, leapt off the bike and ran to meet her, tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. A 2-year-old girl and a war-hardened dog crashed into the most perfect hug imaginable. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in warm fur. Ranger whined with joy and gently pressed his head against her chest like hugging back. The entire Santa Monica pier went quiet for one heartbeat before applause exploded like rolling waves down the beach. Amanda walked over, eyes shining but wet. "Thank you, all of you, not just for Lily, but for showing me there are still good people in this world." Ray dipped his head, hand on her shoulder. "We just did what anyone should do when they hear a cry for help. Difference is, Ranger's ears are a little sharper." Sloane laughed. Duke nodded. "Can't argue with that." Maria knelt and rubbed Lily's head, voice warm. "Kiddo, promise no more hiding in suitcases, okay?" Lily giggled, then turned to Ranger, dead serious like she understood everything. "No hide. Doggy says no." Everyone cracked up. The MC stepped onto the temporary stage and raised the mic. "Today we stand where it all began to thank the people who changed the ending of a tragedy. Not everyone wears a badge or a uniform, but they acted like real heroes." Applause thundered again as he turned to the bikers. "Hell's Angels South Coast riders, thank you for your courage and your humanity." Ray looked a little embarrassed, but when he saw Ranger holding his head high, like he knew today was all about him, he didn't mind the crowd chanting, "Ranger, Ranger, Ranger." The little girl held up a hand-painted sign. "My hero has 4 paws." An old man nearby muttered, 70 years alive and I never thought I'd see bikers get a standing ovation." And as the sun set, painting the ocean in blazing orange, Amanda walked onto the stage with Lily and Ray. She took the mic, voice shaking but clear. "If they hadn't been at that airport that day, if Ranger hadn't heard my daughter's faint breaths, I would be standing here today with empty arms. I owe them everything." Lily stepped forward, hugged Ranger's neck one more time, then turned to the crowd and waved. "Bye-bye, doggy." Laughter rang out, and Ray watched the scene with a warmth he rarely showed. As the ceremony wound down, the MC delivered the closing line, the one that would later appear on newspapers, TV, and social media, as the tribute to men in leather who ride on 2 wheels. Some heroes wear badges, others wear leather, and ride on 2 wheels. The crowd rose to their feet, applause crashing like thunder. Sloane pulled on his helmet and muttered to Ray, "Heroes, huh?" Ray scratched Ranger's head and smiled. "Nah, he's the hero." Ranger barked once, light, proud and full of honor, as if accepting the title for all the Hell's Angels. And then under the sunset, over Santa Monica Beach, the bikers fired up their engines, leaving a gust of wind that whipped the flags and carried the cheers away. Angels without wings, but with 2 wheels. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss thrilling, heart-wrenching stories like this one. See you on the next ride.